it's all interesting stuff. And
there is one thing I'm going to throw at you now.
Go on.
This, again, climate change. So I've been looking at climate change, and part of the reason, and when I was looking at climate change, one of the incredible things is, as I was looking around, having an awful lot of hotels opening over the next year. And there were some really big announcements right across the globe. Hotels, we can see the industry is reviving. We can see that there's a lot of hotels opening up, and hotel resorts in particular. And I came across a story, and it was really about Thailand. it was Thailand and Asia, Southeast Asia, about the number of hotels and resorts opening up there. And I thought, this is great. And you can see it's a marketer's dream, isn't it? Come here, because it's all about tourism. Come here. You're going to have great weather, fantastic scenery. You're looking out onto the scene. And you know what? You can go scuba diving. One of them talked about scuba diving and going out and enjoying the ocean. Now, it just happened that as I was looking at these stories, I came across a story that came out at the same time. And it was about sea snakes. So I put myself in the position of a marketing person who has just announced that we're opening up a new hotel. It's going, you've got these great scenes of the ocean. You can go out into the ocean. You can do scuba diving. And then you find yourself with a story about sea snakes, which is to do with climate change. So there was some research done in Australia, and just by coincidence, actually, they started monitoring sea snakes. And the story was that climate change is warming up the waters and confusing the male sea snakes to the point where they were actually trying to mate with scuba divers. Right? So I was thinking, well, how do you deal with that? If you've just announced your great hotel is opening, how does a marketing person now have to deal with that sort of story? Because if people start looking up what you've just marketed out, sent out there as a message, they're almost certainly going to come across this story.
You did catch me there at the end. That was a total curveball, because I had all kinds of marketing things planned, from observing these lovely sea snakes to something which animal rights people won't like, which is snake hunting. Forgive me, everybody out there who's there, and I'm speaking in jest. What do you do about that one? I think you probably behave as if you've got seriously. If you've got sharks in the water, you simply can't go out there. You need to do nets up to a certain level, don't you, really? And you need to just kind of deal with that.
Well, from a marketing perspective, you just marketed your hotel as being a great place to do scuba diving, and you've got that. So what does the marketing person now do? Do you talk about sea snakes? Do you talk about the story, or you just pretend it doesn't exist?
You can't pretend it doesn't exist, and if you can't get rid of them, you need to give and you've just marketed scuba diving. I suppose that it needs to be a unique scuba diving experience.
Certainly will be that.
Where there is where you're either wearing certain clothing or you're going down in some kind of craft. I don't know.
It actually reminded me of a problem we had when we were opening up these hotels in London, and we were opening up the apart hotels floors at a time, because basically there was, economic crash had happened 2010, 2009. And we decided to, as we were building, to make available the finished apartments to the market. So at least there was some revenue coming in. And I remember having to deal with a situation where the marketing department had gone all out to do a fantastic opening. And they had all this literature. And in the literature, they had highlighted the swimming pools in the apart hotels, which not only had not been constructed, but we were trying to work out ways of not introducing them. So we were trying to work out ways to say, we'll do that later. We'll do it in 10 years' time or whatever. And all of a sudden we had these marketing guys going out and telling the whole world we had swimming pools available from day one when you walk into the actual hotels. The way we got around that was basically drop all mention of swimming pools and just hope nobody looks at the literature that's already been pushed out. But in terms of things like when you think about climate change and how it's affecting, if it's affecting sea snakes and that, who's to say it's not going to affect some other animals in some way, and other aspects of ocean life? So how do you know? It's almost like marketing people have got to start taking on board the fact that there could be some really bad things they have to deal with just from the fact that what looks like a really wonderful calm sea is suddenly not quite what is expected to be.
I mean, I'm a big believer, and I don't know whether there'll be marketing purists or theorists out there who will disagree, perhaps strongly, but I do believe that marketing has to be honest. You know, that you can't market a lie, and you can't market danger or an unpleasant experience. So the marketing people have to be responsible and actually backtrack and be honest, or all trust will be lost, and that brand could collapse in other kind of areas. You know, you said that, they're the ones that told us that there were no sea serpents. There's the scars kind of thing. Yeah. So no, I think honesty has to prevail.
It's interesting you mentioned it in those terms. It's really interesting because there was I think I'll bring it up in the next podcast, but there was a big thing during the summer about how hotel groups and hotels in particular, independent hotels as well, should measure metrics and determine are they doing well or not. Now, what are the measurements as a business now that you should be looking at? And there were 20 metrics that were established as being core metrics. And the number one metric that was recommended, and basically what the survey was done by a group of marketers who came up with all these different metrics, working with revenue managers, and they asked a large number of people who were CEOs and owners of groups of hotels what they thought the number one metric was. And the number one metric turned out to be reputation. Yeah. Everybody agreed, and reputation was the number one metric. So your comments regarding the honesty is really important. So that then sort of makes one think, okay, so marketing people are now responsible for the reputation of the company. You actually think about it in those terms.
Yeah.
So therefore, should marketing people now decide what the company does in certain aspects? So for instance, maybe they should demand, in this particular instance with the sea snakes and maybe other things, they should demand that the hotel get involved with wildlife preservation, should get involved with helping those people who are involved in, I'm not saying lifeboat guards and people like that, maybe they should do that as well, but they should get involved with introducing those things that actually protect us from those type of events and not just assume it's somebody else's responsibility.
The question, isn't it, really? Because at the end of the day, it's the investors, the financiers who've decided, on the location of certain accommodation in order to supply a certain demand, and how they service that demand. Then the marketing people will are brought in to market what's there and what the investors, financiers have decided should be a profitable business. I suppose you could otherwise say it's, what's the expression, like the tail is wagging the dog or something. Yeah. So I'd take your point completely, 100%, because and it's kind of like goes around in a circle, and it's then where does that circle start as to determine what determines what the business is, and perhaps. Yeah, interesting.
I've actually had one weird experience with marketing who actually thought, in fact, it's quite strange, not just one, there's quite a few actually, but one in terms of hospitality, the one example that comes to me where I had to deal with it, or one of the people who had to deal with it, was where marketing people decided that they knew best. What they did was they did a survey and to see what people were using in the apartments. and they did this survey, and it showed that 60% of people, in fact, it was more than 60% of people, actually weren't using the washing machine. So, and remember, we were releasing the apartments a floor at a time as they were being constructed. So I still remember sitting in a meeting, and I didn't really want to go to this meeting, and the owner pulled me along, dragged me along, and I'm sitting in the corner hearing all this stuff. Okay, and they're saying that 60% of our customers, we did a survey, 60% are saying don't want a washing machine. Let's save money, because remember, at that time we'd gone into a downturn. The economy was really being hammered. So they said, look, we can do a great thing here. We're going to actually save you lots of money. We don't need the washing machine. Okay, and everybody's buying into this thing. And the owner looked at me and I said, Raj, what do you think? And I said, first of all, what are you going to do with the hole in the kitchen? It's all been planned. Wait, what else are you going to put in there? Another cupboard that no one's going to use, because who's bringing food with them? Okay. And then the other thing I asked was, well, how many people have you actually surveyed? Because nobody would ask that question. All right. And it turned out to be about 12 people had responded. And he sort of saw this thing, they're all talking percentages and all trying to make a really big impression. And it was such a small sample. Yeah. The minute they said 12, not one person in that room took it seriously. But it showed how far it had got in order to not be taken seriously.
Yeah.
I think the reputation, we have to be really careful about how we are led in terms of what people think about our reputations.
I mean, 100%. And that's then why the concept of brands is so important, isn't it? And why I mean, I'm no branding expert, but why a certain brand means certain things, and the people that operate within that brand have to adhere to certain standards, so yeah, because then what you expect, and whether it's a brand but within a different country or a different culture, but that should nevertheless reflect basically what you can expect there. There will be certain kind of differences, but the old take me to the Hilton advert that scarred my brain since I was I seem to constantly quote it, but I was only about 3 at the time. No, I wasn't, but but that is the thing. Take me to the Hilton. You know what it is wherever you are.
It sets the standard.